Hello! I've been really busy and you've missed a video. I recorded about an hour of painting and preparation and putting on some canopy stuff, and it didn't record properly. It just got corrupted. So unfortunately you've missed that section. But you can see the construction is complete. So I've added yellow on the wheels to match the prop cone. The full assembly is done. If we focus this close in, we can see that there's some rust applied to each of the exhausts. I've obviously put red into each wing light. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not sure right now. There's nothing on the guns are still just drilled out. The undercarriage is far too clean, everything's far too clean, there's absolutely no weathering yet. And the tail wheel broke. I put it in and I used poly cement to put it in, and it went all soft, and I didn't think, and I put it down and it snapped off. So I've hardened this with super glue. So I've used a drop of super glue and put it down here on this edge. You can just make it out. You can see it's hardened off. Lovely. This is really quite hard now, so that's ready for detailing. You can see now the panel lines. You can make out the weathering inside has been done. There's no weathering on these struts that are coming out the undercarriage here. And putting on these wheel covers, this one didn't want to sit straight, so that one sat quite nicely, sat perfectly well. This one, no matter what I did, just would not sit quite right until I sort of tilted it up a little bit, and I actually put a little bit of extra sprue underneath the point under here to actually make sure it got stuck. We can see the bullet exit points, we can see everything else. You can make out now this ill-fitting front here and that ill-fit there. There's not a lot I can do about them. They're underneath, they should be fine. The canopy went on from this side pretty well. You can see I've left the masking on. I didn't go with the Maskol in the end, I went with this. This is tape. Tape masking, but on the other side it popped up a little bit and it sat solid, and I completely missed it while it was there. I didn't notice until I took the masking tape that was holding it down off. So this aircraft though is coming back into land. I don't know whether to try some battle damage on it. I was thinking of putting maybe one or two bullet holes in a line through here, maybe actually through that green. I don't know yet, but we're going to certainly add streaks of shot from the guns, and they're going to be open, so I'm going to make it look like there was doped canvas on the guns. So what they used to do was they would dope fabric and let it dry, and then they'd place it on and rub it on like it was going to stick. It wasn't sticky, but it stuck. And the doping it varied on different aircraft at different times. Sometimes it was an animal fat, sometimes it was an emulsive glue, sometimes it was like a PVA or a horse bone glue. It depended what they had on hand, battle conditions and all that. The idea being that it stopped cold air going into the guns and then jamming them up before they had a chance to fire it. Only let them fire that first time, but it was fine. And we're going to add that doping on as a piece of tape, piece of masking tape that's cut to shape, painted red, and then placed on while it's still wet, pressed down and held in place. If it needs anything, it will again need a brushing of super glue onto it. And what that seems to do is, instead of leaving it looking like this sort of dull, it makes it look hard. So there's all that to do. And there's the prop cover, the prop spinner cover needs another coat of yellow. It's not perfect, you can see colour through it. So that's where we're at with the Hurricane build. But while I've got the camera set up close to, I thought we'd just go through my other builds just to update you what there is. So we have the two 109s. This is the first 109. So you can see I tried to weather it, I've tried to chip it. This is a heavily used E model from the Battle of Britain. You can see on the wing I've added weathering and chipping chipping on the inside of the cockpit. The cockpit is posed open. Now this was before I started putting straps into seating, so you can't see any straps. Nearly broke it then. There's actually a lot of little fiddly parts, but the biggest thing on this one is the oil weathering. This is the first time I did oil weathering, so you can actually see these here look like brush marks. You can see they look like brush marks, but I quite liked the look, especially from the guns. This is a well used, dirty, in the field aircraft. Okay, so that was the first 109. The E model is my favourite 109. So next was the G10. So this is a Revell G10. This was the kit that when I opened it, found was actually moulded in 1996. So this kit is already a veteran kit. Couldn't pose the canopy open, and the cockpit was extremely rudimentary for 1996. But I didn't weather it all that much. I did add some weathering, as you can see, around the cannon bays. But there's little else. I couldn't highlight these easily. These are the guns, the machine guns. But I did do the prop boss. You see the propeller was masked off with a flexible tape. So that's painted on rather than being the transfer. This is a transfer back here. And this was the first time I used decal fix. So they all went on pretty well. Not the best build, but not the worst I've ever done. It was interesting to try it for such an old model kit. So why did I do two 109s first? Oh, because I love 109s. I just do. I actually like the planform there of the two just sat. The next build I did, to balance things up, was a Mustang, RAF Mustang Mark IV. So here she is. Again, I did the overwing dirtying, the weathering. I think this came out best on these guns, these machine guns. So there's a touch of black on each one, and then the streak of the gunfire going backwards over the wing, over the airflow. So we can see that. The cockpit is posed open, no belts still no belts where I did things. We can see a bit more. This was a scratch built antenna because I broke the real one. I was having a bit of a nightmare with small parts. I'd actually broke, I don't know if I mentioned this at the time, but that cannon is the real Airfix cannon. That cannon is a piece of spare sprue that I've cut down and weathered down to whittle down to size. So not perfect, but I was having a bit of a nightmare. Again, I went for a bit of dirtying, but I went this time for a brown dirtying. So it's like a brown black from the exhaust areas there. The idea being that this aircraft would have been supporting things in France in the advance on Germany, so I thought, well, dirty up the exhaust stains, but mainly it would be dirt and mud from the temporary fields it was flying from, and you'll see the machine gun exit ports. I've just broke that poor thing again. So let's just quickly fix that because it's so delicate. So let's put a dot of super glue. Stand it up. Oh, come on, stand up. Damn, the super glue running down the side of the plane. That wasn't planned. See, utter nightmare. Utter nightmare, these little parts. So, not wanting to get myself stuck to it, and I don't have anything to clean myself up with, let's just put it out the way. Next. P-39. So, not my favourite plane ever, and certainly the worst Airfix kit I've ever had. I did go for some chipping on the top surfaces, as you can see. So there's chipping. Let's try and focus this a bit better for you. There we go. So there's chipping and there's smoke from the exhaust going back over the rear bits. But you can see how bad the white is. This is that white I actually threw away in the end. So we got more streaking, but this needed a mass of filling and refilling. So this all needed refilling and redoing here. So this is artificial. This was the PVA and talcum powder trick. Ditto for the front doors. You'll see they're very badly defined because they just needed filling in. They were missing, basically. They were moulded extremely badly. But hey ho, other than that, it was just a practice build. It was going to become a paint mule, but I've left it alone. This matte finish worked quite well on it. And again, it was a good trial out of trying out a decal fix and the decal setter. And the final build before the hurricane began was this one. It's my favourite build so far. So again, Messerschmitt. You can see the detail I put into it was lots of weathering. This is the one that you guys saw me weathering on camera, and now I've figured out how to focus it. You can see how much better some of the smoke effect is over the wing, over the top side. So this is an upward facing exhaust, whereas that's a downward facing exhaust. So if we flip over, we can see that exhaust here is on the underside, that side. We can see streaks from engine intakes. We can see it going from the guns, from the to underside cannon. Actually, we can see it from the forward machine guns on the top side on there. And generally this was just a very slow, sedate build that I enjoyed doing. So there she is in full. So I really enjoyed doing the 110. Biggest plane I've done in a long time, but went well with its stablemate, the 109, which literally we could piggy on the back, 747 Space Shuttle style. So they're the builds so far. Obviously, the hurricane will continue, and we'll try and get this almost blank canvas for the weathering and decals done. What it needs next is, I'm going to say matte finish. It needs a matte finish, but I'm going to do some research to see whether they had gloss finishes. They had glossy finishes on the Spitfire, which helped it go faster. And there's anecdotal information when they were developing the Spitfire. There's eyewitnesses that one of the ways they worked out where it could go faster or slower was with the riveting, because if they use mushroom-headed riveting, it was quicker to do than flush riveting. But they wanted to keep the plane fast, so all flush rivets would have made it go faster. So they actually very carefully would flatten out a panel of they had an aircraft that was completely flush riveted, completely flat, riveted everywhere. And then they got split peas and put the split peas over the heads of the flat rivets to give them the domed effect of a mushroom headed rivet, flew the plane, measured its speed, landed, peeled the peas off that, flew it again, measured it again, and saw where they could get away with the flush riveting. They didn't bother with the Hurricane. If they had have, they'd have probably made it less rugged than it is now. This is an extremely rugged aircraft. This was the aircraft that won air superiority for the RAF, really, because yes, it was a bit slower than the 109, but it was more manoeuvrable. It had the Merlin engine. It was a high-performance fighter, and people forget that it was a high-performance fighter. Just not as high performance as the Spitfire. It was 30 miles an hour slower, I believe, and that made it 15-20 miles an hour slower than the 109. But it was a much better gun platform, took much more damage than both of those highly strung fighters that it was up against. So this was the workhorse. Obviously, the Mark II was fitted not with, well, most of the Mark IIs were not fitted with 8 303 machine guns. They were fitted with two 20mm cannons in each wing, and they became very, very good in the desert because this large radiator could be filtered very, very easily and cleaned out with all the dust and problems you got in the sand much more easily than a 109 with a tropical filter, which really hampered performance. Whereas the in the desert, the Hurricane's performance was almost equivalent to the 109's because the 109 got hindered by filters. So over the Med, the hurricane and sea hurricane certainly proved themselves even further if they hadn't already done it in the summer of 1940. Anyway, I'll leave this little catch up here. It's 15 minutes of time, and as I understand it, a few of my mates have been watching these videos, so hi guys. If you want to find me, you know how to find me. If anyone else wants to find me, comment below, and I'll see you all soon.